When I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I had this friend I used to hang out with, and back behind his house was this creek. And at that age, I was really into creeks and ponds and bodies of water and woods and stuff like that, and that's never really worn off. But at that time, they were about to move out of state, and we would play down there, and we would find crayfish and tadpoles and things like that. So it's a pretty great creek. And anyway, one day he said, look, hey, we're moving out of town. It'd be a shame for this creek to not go used. Let me sell it to you. And of course, I was all over it. Yeah, definitely. So we struck a deal, and I bought the creek behind his house that I would take possession of after they moved. And the price, coincidentally, was everything, all the money that I had. What a coincidence, right? Those funny little coincidences in childhood. Anyway, so they were busy with the move and all of that kind of stuff, and we had things going on with my family. So several days before I could actually go down and enjoy the creek that I bought. So that day came up, and I was so excited. I got home from school, I got on my bike, and I raced over there, and just scoured, not scoured, but just surveyed this creek that I had bought. I went from one end to the other of the property, and I was so proud of myself that I had made such a good deal and bought this creek. And it was a great creek. It had a good batch of water in it. It was grass on both sides and shade trees, and I was just so proud of myself for this deal that I had made. I felt like a big kid, right? Or an adult almost. Wow. Anyway, what a great thing. So I was really pleased with that. So I was playing out there for several days, just enjoying things. And one day, I hear this, hey, and this couple were yelling at me from this deck behind the house that my friend used to live in. And so they called me up there, and they're like, what are you doing in our creek? And I said, well, I'm enjoying my creek. And they're like, well, that's our creek. It's part of our yard, part of our property. And I said, oh, no, it's not. I was very, sure of myself, and that, no, I bought this creek from the guy who used to live here, so this creek is actually mine. And they laughed, and they said, no, I'm sorry, this creek is actually part of the yard and the house. There's no separation between that and this poor kid took your money. And I was just unbelieving. I couldn't believe that this kid would have done that to me, that he sold me the creek out of his house and he had no right, and I had nothing to show for it. I had no title or deed or anything like that. So what a disappointment. I was so upset and just flabbergasted, and I was just, the wrongness of it all was just, it was so much. And how could this possibly be that I had bought this thing, and I had spent all this time just so excited about being able to enjoy my creek. I was so proud of myself, and it turns out that I had been duped. Man, as a kid, that was just like, my balloon was gigantic and it was burst. And wow, and they were adults, and they were very convincing, and I didn't want to be convinced, but ultimately I was, and I had to walk away from my creek, and that it wasn't mine, and that was it. It was done. It was over. I didn't have a creek. I felt like a fool and a loser, and it was awful. And just the unfairness of it all, just the outrage. There was not so much anger as there was sadness, but also this disbelief of my friend, but also, as a side note, a few months before that, we had this bike race that we both bet 50 cents on for the winner, and I won, and he wouldn't pay up because we didn't shake hands on it in advance. So this wasn't necessarily a one-off sort of thing. I wonder what that kid is up to today, what kind of person he's turned out to be. Anyway, I hope he's a better person. It didn't become worse. But anyway, that's kind of funny. But anyway, the whole thing was just it was just wretched. And I think, okay, what are the takeaways on this? As a kid, my takeaway on this, I could have gotten to this spot where, oh, you can't trust anybody, nobody, or just, life is unfair and you never can win, and, all these kind of things. And I think there probably were parts of that were added onto the heap of things that I piled up as the lessons of life. My biggest takeaway in that particular one was, if you're going to make a deal, you got to get it in writing. So that was my biggest takeaway on that one, which I never really got to use. But anyway, it's just kind of funny though, the little things that goes on as a kid. And sometimes those things do pile up into bigger just life lessons, the way you perceive life and how things work out and don't work out. And like I said, I think part of that probably added to some of my thoughts on the way that life works or doesn't work. But at that time, the disappointment was the biggest thing, and the fact that, yeah, I should have got this in writing. But I felt so outraged, so taken advantage of, and just so sad that I didn't get to enjoy this creek that I had bought, that I was so hyped about, so proud of myself over. So yeah, disappointment was the hugest thing. And I look on it now, and yeah, we could draw all kinds of life lessons that we could say, okay, from this we can say that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, how many lessons can we draw from that and all of that? But I think the biggest thing that I have kind of taken from that and continue to take from that is that, guess what? Life happens. It's not always fair. Things aren't always the way we want them to be or expect them to be. Sometimes the situation is just laughable, and sometimes you just gotta laugh it off and just, keep on going and don't make too big of a deal out of it. I could have then, or I could now, make some big deal about it, about how life is unfair and blah, 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 and been out of shape about it and just been miserable. I could still be miserable about it now and carry this big old grudge and hunt the kid down, and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that we have a choice with everything that comes up with, that happens in life, everything that comes up. We have the choice of making a big deal about it or not. We can add it as ammunition to the premises that we hold and the filters that we want to look at life with, and say, see, life is bad and people are bad and you can never trust anyone and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that wouldn't necessarily be wrong. And if that's the way I wanted to view life, then yeah, I could chalk it up to that and add it as evidence to the pile. But these days, I'm looking at it more so as it's something funny to share. We can all laugh about it. We can share our own experiences that are similar in ways that we've been duped as a kid and things that we did. And I've got several instances of things. Apparently I was very trusting and naive as a kid, and I don't know, I feel like I'm probably still trusting and naive as a big kid, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, to look for the good of humanity and all that stuff. But it all comes down to how big of a deal do we want to make out of something. And we can make a big deal out of anything if we want to. We can get all bent out of shape out of anything if we choose to, but it's a choice. And even if we can still choose to not do it any longer. We can take these things that we've made a big deal of and we carried around as a chip on our shoulder. We've made this big grudge thing. We've made this big life is out to get me and people out to get me. But at any time, we can choose differently, and it is a choice where we can just no longer make a big deal out of that, no longer make a big deal out of a lot of things. We can change our minds and decide, guess what? Instead of going around as a victim in life, I am just going to take life and be in the present and make the most out of things, or whatever it is. We have the ability to make a choice at any given time about things in our past, things about our present, things about our future, all the stuff that's going on in our minds, in our lives. It's all a choice, every bit of it. And we can make new choices, and we can change our choices. And all of that is okay. So as far as that story goes, right now I choose to just share it as something that was funny, and just, yeah, it's so typical of little kids on several layers. And yeah, it's it's just, part of growing up, part of being a kid, part of life. And, you know, I still probably will continue to have things that are similar happen in my life because I trust someone, or I trust a situation, or I get my hopes up about something and I didn't really do all the math, or just whatever it is. I can choose to make a big deal out of it or not, and I can choose to learn from it or not, and I can choose to keep doing the same thing again or not. All of these things are all choices. And anyway, at this point, I choose to share this thing with you and hope you laugh, and maybe you'll choose to share a similar experience or something like that from your childhood that you've had, and that would be fun. So anyway, hope you choose to have a great day.